Advent of Code 2022, let's solve day 1 problem, which is calorie counting. Hey everyone, this is KeyStrokes. I'm a senior software engineer at one of the FAANGs, and I love to solve these coding challenges. And today we'll take a look at calorie counting, which is the first problem on the calendar. Here it gives a very nice story about why we are solving these challenges. The idea is that elves are going through a journey to get their favorite snacks, which is a special type of star fruit that only grows deep in the jungle. And every day we have to solve several challenges so that elves succeed in their mission. In today's problem, we are given a bunch of numbers, and these numbers are grouped, where each group is separated by a new line. Each of these numbers correspond to a snack and their corresponding calories. And one group of numbers is all the snacks that an elf is carrying. So in this case, for this list here that we are given, it says that the first elf is carrying food with 6,000 calories, which we can see 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000. The second elf has 4,000 calories, as we see here. Third elf has 5,000 and 6,000 calories, as we see here, and so on. Now our goal is to find which elf is carrying the most calories so that if any elf runs out of snacks, then we'll know which elf to ask the snacks from. So given a list which looks like this, we need to find how many total calories that elf is carrying which has the most calories. Let's jump into our IDE and solve this. So copying all of this input, which is the example input that they've given, and pasting them into this input file that I have. And we'll try to read this input file into our solution.js file. Here I already have a console log statement which says hello day 1. Let's try to run this to make sure this works. I'm already in the right directory, so I can just do node solution.js, and it gives us hello day 1. So to read the file, first we need fs. So we'll acquire fs. Then we can do fs.read file sync and give it the path to the file. In this case, we'll get our current directory and then the file name, which is input. So this should give us the raw bytes. We'll convert it to string, and then we'll split on the new lines, which will look like this. Okay, and let's save this in a variable called elf calories, and let's console log this just to make sure we have read the file correctly. So replacing this message here and running this. Yep, this looks good. We have the input that we have in our text file. Now let's create an array. We will store all the calories that is being carried by each of the elf. So calories, make it an empty array, and then we'll run a for loop on the calories that we have read from the text file. So reading let calorie of elf calories, and then we can see that in our input, the groups are being separated by an empty line. So that's the first check we'll add here. If the elf calorie is empty, then we know that a group ends here. Otherwise, we need somewhere to add these groups together. So let's create another variable here. Let's call it let current calorie count equal to 0. And to this, we can add the calorie that we are reading from the text file, which will be elf calorie. And because this is a string, we can just do a plus in front of the string to convert it into a number. Okay, and if this was a new line, that means the group ends here. So we can push the current calorie count to this calories array that we had. So calories.push, and we'll copy this current calorie count. And then we can reset it to 0 so that we can restart the count for the next group. And yeah, that's all for the for loop. So once we end from the for loop, we'll have to do this calorie.push one final time. And that's because when this group ends, there's no empty line to signify that the group has ended. So we have to rely on the for loop ending, and hence we do an extra push after the loop ends. Now we have a total count of calories for each of the elves. And to get the answer for the first one, I think we can just do math.max and then pass in the calories to it. And it looks like it takes individual values, so we can just expand it. Let's try to run this, and we can see that the answer is 24,000. Let's match it with the example solution given to us, and we can see that 24,000 is the right answer. So let's check the actual input. So copying all of this, going to our IDE and pasting it in the input file, and then running the program again. And the output is 71780, which will go back to Advent of Code and try to submit it right here. So submitting this, and this was the right answer. So we got our 1 gold star. Let's take a look at part 2 now. In part 2, looks like the elf that was carrying most of the calories, it was running out of snacks. So now to avoid the situation, the elf's interested to know top 3 elves that are carrying most calories. And as for the answer, we need to return how many total calories are being carried by these top 3 elves. So going back to our IDE, let's reset this input to the previous input that we had, which will look like this. And going back to the JS file. Now we already have calories, which has the sum of all the calories for every elf. And the best way to get the top 3 calories is to sort this, and then we can pick the top 3 elements from that array. Or alternatively, we can run a loop and then keep track of the top 3 calories that we find. But I think sorting will be much easier. So we can sort this by doing calories and then sort. This will take a callback function, takes in 2 input A and B, and we need to return negative, positive, or 0 value for it to sort properly. So if we return B minus A, this will basically sort it in a descending order. So now if we log our calories, we should see them all sorted. So running this program again, yep, we see they are in decreasing order. So as for the first part, we can simply return the first value and this should give us 24,000. And as for the second part, we can simply do calories 0 plus calories 1 plus calories 2, which will read these 3 first elements and sum them up. So running this, we see the answer is 45,000 for the example. And going back to the example, we can see the answer is 45,000 here as well. So let's try it on the actual input that's provided to us, which I can just undo right here. And now let's run this. The answer is this number. So going back to admin and submitting this, and hopefully this works. And yes, this was right, and we got 1 more gold star. So this was one way to solve it, and I would like to talk another way how we can tackle this problem. So let's continue from this elf calories here. So our input right now for elf calories looks like this right here. Now what we can do is we can do elf calories dot join, and we can join it using a comma. And once we do this, the result we get will be something like 1000, then 2000 and 3000, and then it will skip the empty line and add double commas and then do 4000 and so on. Let's call this joined data. Now the next thing we can do is do join data dot split, and this time we can split on the double commas that we see here, because these double commas are basically now splitting our groups. So once we do this, our output should be an array which has 2 strings in it. The first string will be this part, which we can write like this, and then the second string will be this. Now the next thing we can do is split these individual strings by splitting on the comma. So for that, let's store this in another variable. Let's call it split data. And on split data, we can run a map, and for each of the item, we can further split them on the commas. And so now this transforms into an array of arrays. So this becomes an array itself, and each element gets split on comma. So it looks like this. Now we have 3 elements, 1000, 2000 and 3000 as the first array element, and then the second array element just becomes 4000 because there's nothing to split on. So let's store this in another variable called final split data. And now let's run a loop on this to sum each of these groups. So for that we can do, let's declare a variable called sum array where we'll store the results. Then we can go over the final split data. We can map on each of the group, and for each of the group further, we can reduce them in order to sum them. So for that, let's assume we have a variable called sum where we create a sum of each of the group, and then we have the calorie, which is each individual calories. Now to this, we can do sum plus calorie, and because calorie is a string again in the array, we have to do another plus so that it gets converted into a number. And then we pass in an initial value for sum, which is 0. So let's do console log on this to make sure this works fine. So console logging on sum array, and I'm going to comment the last 2 lines. I think we did not reset our input, so let's do that first. Let's reset it to the example that we have. Otherwise, it's impossible to tell what's going on here. So running this again, we can see we have a nice sum which sort of matches what we have here. It's just not sorted. So now the next step will be to actually sort it. And for that, we can do something that we have done right here in the bottom. So copying this up here, let's sort on the sum array and then do a console log again. And yes, now we can see this is exactly the same as we had before. And copying these exact results that we did before and removing the comment symbols from it. And we can replace the calorie variable with sum array. Now if you run this program, we should get exactly the same answer as we had before. And I think now we can get rid of this previous solution. And technically, you can combine all of this together. And let's give it a shot. So we can first combine these 2 lines. We can simply do elf calories.join, can be put over here. We can get rid of this line. Then further, this can be combined with the next one. So let's break it into multiple lines though. So we first join our input by comma, then we split them by double commas, and then we map them so that we get an array of array. And after this, we run another map, which looks like this. And in this, we run a map again. And for each of the group, we do a reduce. So we can make this a sum array. And now if we do a console log, I hope we'll get the same results, which we did. So yeah, this is another way you can write it. You can utilize all of these join, split, and map methods and make it sort of more intuitive. And if I had to put comments, I would usually put comments corresponding to what each operation is doing. So this one just joins them together. This one splits them on the commas. And then this one splits the individual strings into its own array. And then we sum it up, and then we sort, and then we just log a result. Okay, so this concludes our day 1 of the calendar. I know I've already posted day 24 because that's when I started recording the videos, but now I'm going to go in serial order and solve all of these. I hope the video is helpful and that you enjoyed my explanation. And if you did, then please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And you can further show me your support by buying me some coffee and joining my Patreon that I recently released. I'm working on more videos, and if you have any suggestions, please post them in the comments so that I can make videos on those topics as well. That will be all for today. Thank you so much for joining in.